Nice to meet you. This is Dr. Kim from Richgo.
Hello, this is Kim Ki-won from Richgo.
As the burden of housing costs increases, the shift from jaunts to monthly rent is becoming more pronounced. So today, I'd like to discuss the current state of the rental market and its future outlook.
Today, we're talking about the rental market, the Officetel rental market, and then we have data on the supply of Officetels. But, looking at it, the supply of Officetels is rapidly decreasing in the future. So, I'm a bit concerned about these areas, and especially in the case of villas, since the market is so bad, the supply is bound to be very limited. In addition, because of the problems of the whole world and such, demand is bound to be concentrated on monthly rent, and, in the future, supply will decrease significantly. So, in the non-apartment market, such as Officetels and villas, the acceleration of monthly rents and the rise in rents seems somewhat unavoidable. And as I mentioned a few months ago, there are a lot of auctions. So, if there is a real demand in this market, I would like to see them go through auctions. Since you are going to pay rent anyway, just do it. If I can win a villa or an Officetel at a low price through an auction, that would be better than just paying monthly rent.
That's right.
So, I think it would be good to consider those aspects a bit more.
The overall real estate market has been reported to be quite bad in the news lately. However, the rental market has been on the rise for a long time, and there are continuous reports about high demand. Let's take a look at what kind of data is coming out.
As you can see, here, a newspaper article states that the monthly rent for Officetels in Seoul has increased throughout the entire year. The yield is at its highest in 5 years. We're currently discussing this. So, the transition from jaunts to monthly rent in the non-apartment market is happening rapidly, but this is largely due to the significant impact of jaunts fraud. And also, what else is there? The asymmetry of this information. We can pretty much know everything about apartments, right? We know how much apartment A costs, right? But we don't really know much about villas or Officetels. So, because of this, people are committing jaunts fraud, and now we have victims of jauntsy scams. It's pretty scary, right?
Like jaunts.
I want to rent monthly. This is how it works, and another issue is that the gap between buying and jauntsy is really small. Most of the Officetels I've seen are around 95% or 90%. There's almost no difference between the sale price and the jauntsy. So, because of these issues, it seems like the shift to monthly rent is happening quickly, and the transaction volume seems to be increasing a lot right now. Now, if you look at this, what is the fluctuation rate of monthly rent for Officetels? It's been fluctuating and is still on the rise. So, it's been on the rise for 18 months now. In particular, the rise in small Officetels with a dedicated area of 40 square meters or less has been steep. That means there's been a huge demand for small Officetels. These days, there are so many single-person households. That's right.
Buying is quite a big expense. And as you mentioned, jaunts can be burdensome. So, it seems like single-person households in particular prefer to live in Officetels for a more comfortable monthly rent.
So, the impact of jaunts fraud, and if you look at this article, the shortage of Officetel supply is also a factor in the rise of monthly rent. There's talk about this right now, so let's actually go into Richgo and take a look at the data. I base everything I say on data. If you look here, this is where you enter Richgo Expert. And there's also a system for businesses. It's called Richgo Mars. Once you enter there, you can see everything. If you select the type of this building as an Officetel instead of an apartment, you'll see the supply volume across the country. And if you look here, you'll see the number of units that were occupied by year. When was there a lot of supply for Officetels?
In 2020? 2019? 2020?
2018 had the highest number, and there was a huge oversupply in 2018, 2019, 2020, and even 2021. But it's been 25 years now. Now, it's come down, below the average of the past 25 years. But how many years has it been? We're now entering a period of supply shortage for the first time in 13 years. And since the market isn't doing well, it's natural that there wouldn't be much supply. And what will happen next year? It's less than 12,000 households. And in 2027 and 2028, the supply will also significantly decrease. Of course, there might be a slight increase in 2027 or 2028. However, considering the current planned move-in quantities, we can already see that the supply of Officetels is The things that are happening now can come in at that time, but the move-in is now. If we look at the amount of housing that is scheduled to be occupied, it is already the case that the offices are. The supply shortage is just beginning, and especially next year, the supply of new constructions is going to decrease significantly. So, we probably call it 이월주가, right? Oh my God, frozen, and new apartments. But yes, I will give you the clothes that are frozen in the rubber month. Following 이월주가, we have 일주고, frozen, and new Officetels. But what's the problem with new Officetels? It's expensive, really too expensive. Of course, especially recently, a lot of high-end Officetels have been built. So, there's an Officetel right across from here. But if it were me, I'd rather buy an apartment than pay that much money, you know. It's really expensive. The monthly rent is really expensive and the prices are, in a way, just too high. But I think there might be markets where that's not the case. If you just look at Seoul, the Officetels here are really smaller. So take a look. Earlier we looked at the nationwide situation and now we're focusing only on the supply of Officetels in Seoul. How is it? Starting from 2024, the supply has fallen below the average, and by 2025 and 2026, we will completely enter a supply cliff for Officetel.
Under 5,000 units?
Yes, it's less than 4,000 units. So, I think it would be good for business people who can find opportunities in this area. Because, as I say over and over again, opportunities don't exist in the market where everyone is enthusiastic and excited. Opportunities exist in markets that aren't doing well. So, a few months ago, I said that it would be good to think positively about winning the bid at auction in the market for villas or Officetels. As you all know, Kim Ki-won is an investor and a very conservative investor. When Kim Ki-won says it's okay to try, it's because I do it based on data, so it's really okay to try. But what was the basis for me to say that back then? It's all data-driven, and if you go into Richgo, you'll see that there are auctions as well. As you all know, Richgo is an all-around player. It covers auctions, land, buildings, everything. Recently, our rankings have been improving quite a bit. If you go into the auctions now and check the sales statistics for the past 20 years, let's focus on the B, villa, and Officetel markets. How does it look compared to after the financial crisis? It's definitely increased a lot, right? That's right. It's definitely increased a lot. So, since the credit crisis hit, this is the highest we've seen in 15 years. This is how it goes. What is this story about? Right now, there are huge auction opportunities coming up in the Officetel and open villa markets. But the supply will be limited in the future. Right? Auctions are pouring in and rent is going up. Let's say our friend Richgo is in a financial situation where they have no choice but to live in a villa or Officetel. Are you going to live with this increasing debt while paying rent? Or would you rather win an auction at a low price and take out a loan to cover the interest payments?
Get auction information through the Richgo app. I'm going to take out a loan.
That's right. Of course, you need to carefully consider each property in detail, right? You need to think about that aspect as well. Why? More than anything, the supply is going to decrease in the future. Okay, and
We've only looked at the market supply. But is the supply of villas also decreasing?
Unfortunately, we don't have data to look at the supply of villas. So what we can reasonably infer is, what has been the biggest issue in the villa market in recent years?
Fraud.
Fraud. So if you look at the number of auctions, you can see that auctions are increasing like this. It's the highest it's been in 15 years. So what does that mean? No one paid any attention to it. And since the market is bad, can there be any supply when the market is down? Is there none? No, if it sells, it has to be sold at a high price, so the suppliers won't work hard to build it. But the market is not good and the number of auction lots keeps increasing, so they can't build. So there probably won't be much supply in the villa market either. We can definitely make some reasonable inferences. Next, let's talk about Officetels. I prefer an Officetel. If you were to ask me, would you rather live in an apartment or a villa? Would you rather live in an Officetel? I think I'd go for an Officetel. How about you, Richgo?
Me too. I need to see it too.
Because first of all, the data for villas isn't clear, but for Officetels, we can clearly see the data. just look at the number of Officetel auctions. How does it compare to when we looked at the multifamily houses earlier? There are now over 1,400 Officetel auctions, right? There are over 3,000 multifamily houses. But what's the trend like? These trends are completely different. And Officetels can actually be located in some pretty good areas, right next to the subway station. So if you choose wisely, it might not be a bad idea. So the fact that we're worried about our rent going up is something that anyone can do. And in reality, the size of the assets is not that large. There are people who have to live in Officetels or villas. So if I were to give them a solution, I would say, why don't we go with a new building that's only been built a few years ago, instead of a day laborer like me? Since the supply is decreasing, just like the trends we talked about, like cold but still want to drink iced coffee, or cold but still want to eat ice cream, right? Since newly built properties have a certain level of scarcity, they will hold value. And of course, it's better to buy them at a lower price, so I would go for auctions. So that's what paying monthly rent is all about. And if you're thinking, I don't know how to auction, don't worry. We'll probably open this place up later. And it will be a venue where many auction experts will gather. You can come by then. Feel free to get some advice. And if you need help with auctioning or anything like that, we'll be able to assist you with all of that.
You mentioned that we should keep an eye on the security market for both Officetels and villas. Lastly, how do you view the monthly rent market?
The data on monthly rent is clear right now. Let me show you the data on monthly rent. This is the sales data for Officetels. This is the Jonse. This is the monthly rent. As you can see, there aren't many sales, right? But what about Jonse? But there are still some. But what has increased the most recently? It's the monthly rent. If you just look at this, this is based on data from Seoul, specifically for Officetels in Seoul. So, in the case of Officetels, the monthly rent market is currently almost completely dominant. And earlier, I showed you the data on the supply of monthly rent, but how is the supply looking? The supply of newly built properties is rapidly decreasing. You can't supply Officetels quickly.
That's right.
You can't supply them quickly. It takes 2 or 3 years. Of course, it takes less time than getting to an apartment. However, because a significant supply cliff is expected in the future, the demand for monthly rent, especially for Officetels, will inevitably continue. Plus, there are no new properties coming into the rental market. So, monthly rents can definitely go up in the future. So, I don't think we can avoid the acceleration of monthly rents in the Officetel market. So, to avoid that, why not just take out a loan and buy it at an auction? Of course, you can't just buy any property. An Officetel that can be as good as Hwanggeumsong. I think it would be good to choose an Officetel where the demand is at least enough to avoid vacancies. And just as a reference, this is from Richgo. Let's go to the auction map, and I'll show you something briefly. If you go to Richgo, anyone can view the auction map. Here, I'll just select Officetels. Officetel. So what do you think? So with this, all the data for wherever I live comes up. If you look here, there's this point, this point, this point, this point. What does each of these points represent? These are auction properties for Officetels. There are a few blue dots next to Gangnam Station where we're currently filming. It's at Yeoksam Station. It's at Seolung Station. It's at Yeonju Station. It's at Sinunhyun Station. It's at Nambu Terminal Station. It's at Naksongdae Station. It's at Gwanak Station. There's none at Bongcheon Station, but there is at Silim Station. The reason why I like Officetels is because of this. There are quite a few Officetels around subway stations. You win the bid here? How much is it now? 83 nara. It got rejected 5 times. There are some that cost 1 billion won and some that cost 170 million won. At this point, even if I only have a few thousand in assets, I wouldn't bother living in a villa or something like that. I would challenge myself to participate in Officetel auctions instead.
Got it. Yes, the rental market is quickly shifting from JONS to monthly rent. In today's video, we provided insights on the future supply of Officetels and how to approach investing in them through the data we discussed. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you